If you haven't already done so, if you would open up to 1 Samuel chapter 23. That's where our text will be this morning. Thank you, Grayson, for reading that scripture for me today. It's a real joy to watch the young men of this church and this congregation growing up in service to God. Thank you, Coleman, for leading singing. Thank all of you for your willingness to step up. This has been a difficult year for cancer patients in the League City Church. I found much encouragement knowing Jim and talking with him about his teaching days, and to see his eyes just light up when he thought about his students and being in class. And right up to the end, he was thinking about others, and so happy for Edgar and Alyssa, who took the time to comfort him in person. And Debbie was such an ally. She helped me understand that I'm not defined by cancer. And as long as there's breath in my lungs, I will continue to proclaim the good news of our Savior, Jesus Christ. And Tim was such a trooper. We crossed paths on several occasions, walking in or out of MD Anderson. And sometimes he looked like he had just been mugged. I knew he wasn't feeling well, but he always had a smile to share. And just a few weeks before he was gone, I think some of you saw that he let Leo drive that hot rod of his around the parking lot. I don't know who had the bigger smile, whether it was Tim or Leo, but it was quite a sight to see. Lost all three of them this year. It's been hard. But one of the things that's been so uplifting is the number of you that have continued to send cards and notes of encouragement. You know who you are. I have one that I'd like to share with you that has been beautifully decorated and says it's from Crazy R Us, which makes me kind of laugh. I asked Joanna if I could have her permission to read some of these because, folks, this is the kind of thing that will lift your spirits because it is a card full of dad jokes. I read every single one of them to Daisha and got eye rolls on most of them, which I think says these are good jokes. Why was Cinderella so bad at soccer? Because she kept running away from the ball. And where do polar bears keep their money? Where else? In a snowbank, silly. And what did the horse say after it fell? Help! I've fallen, and I can't giddy up. Thank you for sharing those with me, Joanne, and for lifting my spirits. What a joy it is to know you. This morning, I'd like to take a few minutes to look at 1 Samuel chapter 23 and what I believe is just an amazing story. Those of you that know the David story, and I know that we all are familiar with this story, David has been in Saul's service. He killed Goliath and has now been put in charge of his armies. And you know the saying, you know where it went. Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his tens of thousands. And then Saul got jealous and even tried to kill his own son. So David left and is now on the run. David had to flee. And he's ended up with a ragtag bunch of scoundrels, and they're hiding. They don't want to harm the Lord's anointed. They don't want to kill Israelites who are only serving the nation of Israel. And so they've decided to go into hiding rather than to have conflict. It speaks, I think, volumes to David's character and these men that have decided to follow him. And it's in the midst of this interesting dynamic that something very interesting happens. It's in the opening words of what Grayson just read for us in chapter 23 of 1 Samuel. It says, they told David. The Philistines are attacking. They're coming and they're trying to steal their livestock and trying to steal their livelihood. And they don't go to the king. They don't go to the one in charge of Israel. They go to the one hiding. They go to the one who is trying to stay hidden and stay away. He's not the king. The leadership has fallen apart and no longer doing what God has tasked the leadership with doing. And so when Keilah is in trouble, they tell David instead of Saul. Well, they did this because I believe David is a hero. I think David is a hero. And this morning, we're going to look to see what it takes to become a hero. What is it that a hero does? So, they told David, "Behold, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and robbing the threshing floors. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, shall I go and attack these Philistines?" And the first thing I think to note about heroes is that they put God first. Before doing anything in this situation, David asks God, "What should I do? What should happen here?" And I love the fact that God is very clear in what he wants David to do. He says, yes, you need to go and save the people of Keilah. And let's be honest, this may be a little difficult for us to hear because we don't always get a clear message from God. I mean, it's 2023, and I don't know how many of you have heard God's voice booming from heaven when you ask him a question, but it doesn't always work that way. And sometimes it's hard to know what to do. But David put God first, asked God what to do, and God gave him a clear answer. I wonder, is it really a struggle to know what the right thing to do is? I mean, can we not maybe fall back a little bit and say, well, because God doesn't speak to us directly, then maybe we don't exactly know what to do. I think that's a cop-out. Because I think we do. I think we know what the right thing to do is. And of course, if we're not sure, we should ask God. But then something interesting happens. In verse 3, David's men say, "Are you out of your mind? You want us to go and save the people of Keilah when Saul is trying to find us? We will get exposure. We'll be trapped in the city and his army can come and take us and it'll be a bloody battle and you know that it won't end well." And they actually got him. They actually got David to question, what should I do? But here's the thing. Heroes don't act like everybody else. And while they may have gotten David to waver a little bit, maybe they got him to question a little bit, he immediately asks God again. I like that. I like that. Because as David's men are questioning him, and let's be honest, they're giving him good advice. It is not smart for us to go and be exposed when we're trying to save Israel and protect the Lord's anointed. You're the one who said we should do that. And so David goes back to God and asks again. So David inquired of the Lord, verse 4, and the Lord answered him, "Arise and go to Keilah, for I will give the Philistines in your hand." So here's the thing. Heroes not only look to God first, and not only are they different than the rest of everyone else, but they continue to turn back to God. I like that. Even and maybe especially when they're struggling with what to do. Because how often today are we struggling with what should I be doing? Where should I be putting my time and my energy? How should I be putting God first? So David and his men go to Keilah. They fight with the Philistines. They brought away their livestock and struck them with a great blow. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. And I learned something really powerful about heroes here. Because heroes do God's work without the need of a title or recognition. David's not the king. It's not his job. He has he has been anointed, but he has not yet been put in service. We kind of know that that's coming. The country knows that that's coming. Everybody knows that that's around the bend, but he is not the king. Saul is the king. And the people of Keilah didn't ask the king, they asked David. And heroes do God's work without the need of a title. I mean, how many of us have said to ourselves, they don't want me. They haven't asked for my help. They don't want to know what I can provide. They don't know how good I could do this job. And we do this, right? We kind of sit back and we judge those who are doing it because we don't really like how they're doing it. And we could do it so much better if they would just only give me that title. If they would only ask. Well, here's the thing. Heroes step up. They don't wait for that title. They don't wait for a coronation ceremony. They don't wait for the pomp and the circumstance and the trumpets to blow. Da, 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 da. Hear ye, hear ye. This proclamation is to let everybody know that Paul Hendrickson is now in charge. Really? Is that really what we're waiting for? Is that really what we need to step up and serve God? Can we not look around us and see needs that are not being met? Can we not look around us and see those that are poor? To find someone that is lonely? To find someone that needs more than a paycheck or needs more than a check or a pat on the back? Are we willing to find someone that needs us to sit on the ash heap with them? Are we willing to find someone that needs us to invest in their lives, our time, and our attention? Are we honestly going to say that we don't know one person that is not a Christian that needs to hear the gospel? They need us to step up. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when we have a title, but right now. Because heroes step up. And it's here that this story takes a very interesting turn. We get these details about Abiathar bringing the ephod, and now we hear word that Saul is coming. And so David is going to make use of the ephod to inquire of God again. And he's going to ask this question: God, will the people of Keilah give us up? And I want you to consider this for a moment. Because it would have been pretty easy for David and his men to just tell them, hey, look, we're going to take your town. Yeah, we saved you from the Philistines, but now you're giving us up to Saul. This is ours now. He easily had that choice. David and his men could easily overthrow Keilah because it's a nothing town. They couldn't even hold their own against a Philistine threat. They called David for help. He has saved them. Now they're going to give him up. But heroes, are you ready for this? They serve people that don't deserve to be served. They could just take what they want. They could let this be the place where they make their stand. And folks, we know about David, and we know about that warrior inside of him. We know from reading the rest of the stories that all he ever needs is a little bit of time, a little bit of chance to regroup, and he's going to win when the odds are against him, and he always does when the odds are against him. But David recognizes that sometimes people don't deserve to be served, but they still need to be served. And they still need to be looked out for. Why do we serve? Why do we do that? Why do we give our time to people in need and people that are struggling? Do we need somebody following behind us, telling everyone all the good things we have done? Folks, that's not going to happen. Nobody's going to pat you on the back, tell you you've done a great job. And yes, those that we serve will take the side that seems easiest, even if it means throwing us under the bus just after we've helped them. It's been happening since the beginning of time, and it's not going to stop now. And as I think of David and his men going to his men and saying, okay, it's time to pack it up, it's time to go, we're going to leave the people of Keilah. We don't want things to get messy here. I think that heroes would rather do the right thing than to be right. And I really struggle with that. Nobody would have said that David was at fault for saying, we're going to make our stand here, we're going to protect ourselves here. People know where this is heading. In just a couple of chapters, they're going to come up against Nabal, and you know what Abigail says. Look, we know you're going to be king, but you don't want to start with all this violence. And she protects him, and he listens to him, which is amazing. David has saved the people of Keilah not once, but twice. And they leave peacefully and quietly. And I think what we learn most from this story, that being a hero is not easy. Do you think of David as a hero? I mean, you know the stories, right? We've heard them all. All of the kings are going to get measured by David. As we read through 1 Kings, 2 Kings, as we read through the history of Israel and all the kings over these 400 years, they're all going to be measured by one measuring stick. Either they followed God with their whole heart, as their forefather David did, or they didn't follow God like their forefather David did. That's the measurement right there. They are either as good as David or not. He's the measuring stick. He is the hero. He's the one who always does the right thing. He is the one who makes the right decisions, who's always inquiring of God. Well, until that moment that Joab murders Abner, and David makes this big and like a pony show about, oh, that was terrible, he shouldn't have done that, but leaves him in his service? Really? You leave a murderer? Why would you leave a murderer in your service? Fights with Michal. Has all kinds of interesting things happen until that moment. You know what that moment is, right? You know where I'm heading with this. In 1998, I had the chance to teach the first and second grade class at the Wilshire Church of Christ in Oklahoma City. And what a joy that was. I'm telling you, that's some of my favorite memories ever. And we went through the David story. We learned everything there was to know about our hero David. Marjorie Milligan taught me this David story when I was in the 3rd grade, and I still remember to this day her sharing those stories. And folks, we put David up on a pedestal. All of Israel does. He's special. He's a hero. But let me tell you something else about David. He's also an adulterer. And then he tried to frame one of his closest followers for not obeying God. One of his 30 fighting men. Tried to trap him into breaking the law so that he could cover up his own sin and point the finger at one who was completely loyal to him and so much better than him. And when that didn't work, then he used that murderer Joab, who he left in service when he should have ousted him, and said, kill him. And that's exactly what he did. So, is David a hero, or is he an adulterer, a cover-up artist, and a murderer? That's our hero? Yep. Turns out, he's a human being, just like all of us. Turns out he makes mistakes, just like you and me. And then he tries to cover them up. It only makes things worse. And I'll never forget the moment that we read what David did in 2 Samuel chapter 11, and Jessica Thompson, who's now a mother, has 2 children. I'm so glad that we get to connect on Facebook. I looked up at the end of that story, and there were tears. There were actual tears coming from a young first grader who looked at me and said, "How could he do that?" Because she had been betrayed by her hero. But folks, there's something that makes David special. You ready for this? There's something that makes David special. David is made in the image of God. Just like you. And just like me. We can talk all day about what it means to be a hero. But the fact is, each and every one of us has been called into God's service. It doesn't matter if we have a title. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. It doesn't matter if those that we are serving deserve it or not. All that matters is that you and I have been called to be shining lights. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," has shone in our hearts to give the light of knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. God shines love into our hearts, and we shine that light into the world. And it doesn't matter if we agree with everything that's happening around us. It doesn't matter if we've been given a title or not. You and I are expected to step up. We are expected to figure out how to serve, to seek those that are lost, those that are hurting, those that are lonely, and those that are in need. Let your light shine before people, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. See, we are called not as heroes, but rather we are called as those created in the image of God to spread His good news. If you're not a part of God's kingdom today, you've not been baptized into the death of Jesus, the invitation here is always open. If you have any prayers that you would like to bring this church, we would invite you to come as we stand and sing.